Systolic blood pressure tells the story of motion, of force, of the heart pushing life forward with each beat. It is the number that rises when a heart contracts, sending blood through arteries that have carried that same rhythm for decades. In younger years, these vessels expand easily, welcoming each pulse like a flexible riverbank guiding flowing water. With age, however, the nature of these vessels changes. They stiffen gradually, not because the heart weakens, but because time alters the structure of the arterial walls. Collagen replaces elasticity, and what once stretched now resists. As a result, the same heartbeat generates higher pressure, and systolic readings begin to climb, even in individuals who feel otherwise well. This rise in systolic pressure carries profound implications for seniors because it represents a constant mechanical load placed on the cardiovascular system. Each heartbeat becomes an act of negotiation between force and resistance. When arteries cannot expand, pressure has nowhere to go but upward. This increased force is transmitted directly to vital organs, especially the brain. Over time, the delicate blood vessels in the brain experience stress that they were never designed to tolerate indefinitely. This is why elevated systolic pressure is so closely linked to stroke, small vessel disease, and gradual cognitive changes that may appear years after the damage begins. The kidneys, too, feel the effects of sustained systolic pressure. These organs rely on precise pressure gradients to filter blood efficiently. When pressure remains elevated, filtration becomes less refined, slowly impairing kidney function without obvious symptoms. The eyes, another organ rich in tiny vessels, may also suffer, leading to vision changes that seem unrelated until blood pressure is examined more closely. What makes systolic pressure particularly dangerous is not its drama, but its persistence. It does not announce itself with pain or fatigue. It works quietly, day after day, reshaping the internal environment. For seniors, this number becomes especially meaningful because it reflects vascular aging more than lifestyle alone. Even individuals who remain active and mindful can experience rising systolic pressure simply because arteries stiffen over time. This does not mean effort is wasted, it means understanding must evolve. Movement, proper nutrition, and stress management still play powerful roles, but they work by reducing additional strain rather than reversing structural aging. Recognizing this distinction helps remove guilt and replaces it with strategy. Systolic pressure also reveals how hard the heart must work to maintain circulation. When resistance increases, the heart adapts by thickening its muscular walls, a response that initially preserves function but eventually reduces efficiency. This adaptation increases oxygen demand and sets the stage for heart failure if left unchecked. Again, this progression unfolds slowly, often without symptoms, making regular monitoring essential. Understanding systolic blood pressure allows seniors to see risk as a spectrum rather than a sudden event. It highlights why medical guidance often prioritizes lowering systolic values after 60, not to chase perfection, but to reduce long-term strain. When this number is viewed not as a threat, but as information, it empowers thoughtful action. Awareness leads to earlier intervention, calmer decision-making, and a deeper respect for the remarkable but finite adaptability of the aging cardiovascular system. Diastolic blood pressure speaks during the quiet moments, in the pause between heartbeats, when the heart relaxes and the arteries hold the blood that has just been delivered. It is often overshadowed by the more dramatic systolic number, yet it carries its own important meaning, particularly in how it reflects vascular tone and the body's ability to maintain steady circulation at rest. In younger adults, elevated diastolic pressure often signals arteries that are too tight, resisting blood flow and forcing the heart to work harder even when it should be resting. This kind of pressure pattern is closely linked to early hypertension and responds well to lifestyle changes that restore flexibility and balance. In older adults, however, the story shifts in a subtle but crucial way. As arteries stiffen with age, they lose their ability to recoil efficiently between beats. This stiffness can cause diastolic pressure to fall, sometimes into ranges that appear reassuring on paper but carry hidden risks. When diastolic pressure drops too low, it may compromise blood flow to the heart muscle itself. The coronary arteries that nourish the heart fill primarily during this resting phase, and if pressure is insufficient, the heart may not receive the oxygen-rich blood it needs, especially during times of increased demand. This dynamic creates a delicate balance for seniors. While high diastolic pressure can still be harmful, excessively low diastolic pressure introduces a different kind of vulnerability. It challenges the assumption that lower numbers are always better, and reminds us that circulation depends on equilibrium rather than extremes. The heart, like any living tissue, thrives within a narrow range of conditions. When pressure falls below that range, even briefly, the consequences may accumulate quietly over time. Diastolic pressure also reflects how well the vascular system maintains baseline support for organs throughout the body. The brain, kidneys, and peripheral tissues rely on steady perfusion during these resting moments. If pressure dips too low, tissues may experience subtle undersupply, not enough to cause immediate symptoms, but enough to contribute to fatigue, dizziness, or reduced exercise tolerance. These sensations are often attributed to aging itself, yet they may reflect hemodynamic changes that deserve attention. For seniors, understanding diastolic pressure requires a shift in perspective. It is no longer just a number to lower, but a signal to interpret within context. Medications, dehydration, rapid posture changes, and autonomic changes with aging all influence diastolic values. Recognizing this helps guide more personalized care, where treatment aims to support overall circulation rather than pursue aggressive reduction. This awareness encourages seniors to engage in more nuanced conversations with healthcare providers. It invites questions about symptoms, daily patterns, and how blood pressure behaves throughout the day, rather than focusing on isolated readings. Diastolic pressure becomes part of a larger picture, one that reflects rest, recovery, and the body's ability to sustain itself between moments of effort. In this way, the quieter number reveals its importance, not through urgency, but through its role in maintaining balance within an aging cardiovascular system. Between the two familiar blood pressure numbers lies a space that often goes unnoticed, yet it carries some of the most revealing information about vascular health, especially in older adults. This space, known as pulse pressure, is the difference between systolic and diastolic values, and it reflects how the arteries respond to each heartbeat. In a youthful, flexible vascular system, this difference remains modest as arteries expand and recoil smoothly with each pulse of blood. Over time, however, structural changes occur within the arterial walls, altering this relationship in ways that quietly increase risk. As arteries stiffen with age, they lose their ability to absorb the energy of each heartbeat. Instead of stretching to accommodate blood flow, they transmit force directly forward, causing systolic pressure to rise while diastolic pressure often falls. The result is a widening pulse pressure, a pattern that signals reduced elasticity and increased mechanical stress throughout the circulatory system. This widening is not merely a mathematical difference, it is a physiological marker of aging vessels that have become less adaptable and more vulnerable. In seniors, an elevated pulse pressure has been shown to correlate strongly with cardiovascular events, often more accurately than either systolic or diastolic pressure alone. It reflects cumulative wear on the arterial system, shaped by years of blood flow, inflammation, and metabolic demands. This measure captures the dynamic interaction between the heart and the vessels, revealing how efficiently energy is transferred and dissipated with each beat. When pulse pressure widens, it suggests that the system is losing its ability to buffer force, exposing organs to greater stress. The brain is particularly sensitive to these changes. Increased pulse pressure can transmit excessive pulsatile energy into the cerebral circulation, contributing to small vessel damage and gradual cognitive decline. Similarly, the kidneys experience increased pressure fluctuations that strain delicate filtering structures, accelerating functional decline. These effects often develop slowly, without traumatic symptoms, making pulse pressure an especially valuable early indicator of systemic stress. Understanding pulse pressure shifts the focus from isolated numbers to relationships. It emphasizes that cardiovascular health is not defined by a single value, but by balance and interaction. This perspective encourages a more holistic approach to blood pressure management in seniors, one that considers arterial health, not just pressure reduction. Lifestyle interventions that support vascular flexibility, such as regular movement, balanced nutrition, and stress reduction, take on renewed importance when viewed through this lens. For seniors, awareness of pulse pressure can transform how blood pressure readings are interpreted. It fosters deeper conversations about aging, resilience, and prevention, moving beyond simplistic thresholds toward individualized understanding. Rather than inducing alarm, this knowledge invites attentiveness and early action. It reinforces the idea that the body offers subtle signals long before a crisis occurs, and that learning to recognize these patterns allows for timely support and thoughtful care. In this way, pulse pressure becomes a quiet but powerful messenger, reflecting the long-term dialogue between the heart, the vessels, and the passage of time. Understanding blood pressure is ultimately an exercise in awareness rather than fear, a shift from seeing numbers as threats to recognizing them as signals shaped by daily life. For seniors, this shift can be transformative. Blood pressure readings are often delivered quickly, sometimes without explanation, leaving individuals to interpret them through anxiety or incomplete understanding. Yet these numbers are not moral judgments or fixed destinies. They are reflections of how the body responds to years of movement, rest, nourishment, emotional stress, and environmental demands. When viewed through this lens, blood pressure becomes a language the body uses to communicate its needs and limits. Awareness begins with curiosity. Instead of asking only whether a number is good or bad, seniors benefit from asking why it looks the way it does. This question opens space for meaningful change. Elevated pressure may reflect chronic tension, disrupted sleep, prolonged sitting, or subtle dehydration. Lower than expected values may signal medication effects, reduced vascular tone, or insufficient recovery. Each reading becomes a snapshot of an ongoing process rather than a fixed label. This perspective encourages consistency in monitoring and patience in interpretation, both of which are essential for long-term health. Lifestyle plays a powerful role in shaping this dialogue between biology and behavior. Gentle, regular movement helps arteries remain responsive, improving how pressure is distributed with each heartbeat. Thoughtful nutrition supports vascular integrity and reduces inflammatory burden. Stress regulation, often underestimated, influences hormonal pathways that directly affect blood pressure regulation. Even breathing patterns can alter vascular tone, reminding us that control does not always come from force, but from rhythm and balance. When seniors understand this, they reclaim agency, recognizing that small, consistent choices accumulate into meaningful physiological effects. This awareness also fosters better communication with healthcare providers. Seniors who understand their numbers are more likely to ask informed questions, report subtle symptoms, and participate actively in treatment decisions. Care becomes collaborative rather than directive. Medications, when needed, are seen not as failures, but as tools that support the body when lifestyle adjustments alone are insufficient. This balanced approach reduces fear and increases adherence over time. Perhaps most importantly, awareness nurtures compassion toward the aging body. It acknowledges that change is inevitable, but decline is not always unavoidable. The cardiovascular system, even in later decades, remains responsive to care and attention. Blood pressure readings become checkpoints rather than verdicts, opportunities to pause, reflect, and adjust. This mindset reduces anxiety, which itself can elevate pressure, creating a positive feedback loop of understanding and calm. In learning to interpret blood pressure with clarity and curiosity, seniors engage in an ongoing conversation with their own physiology. This conversation is not about perfection, but about listening closely and responding wisely. It reinforces the idea that health is dynamic, shaped by daily interactions between mind, body, and environment, and that even later in life, awareness remains one of the most powerful tools for protection and resilience.
Preparedness is not about mastering rare emergencies, but about cultivating a quiet familiarity with how the body behaves under threat, long before that threat appears. Knowing what to do before help arrives during a stroke is less about control and more about respect for the delicate intelligence of the human brain. The brain is not a machine that can be switched off and restarted. It is a living network that responds continuously to its environment. In the earliest minutes of a stroke, it is still communicating, adapting, and attempting to protect itself with the limited resources available. Preparedness means recognizing this effort and choosing actions that support it rather than disrupt it. This understanding changes how urgency is experienced. Instead of frantic motion, preparedness creates purposeful calm. It allows the mind to stay clear enough to recognize symptoms, call for emergency services promptly, and remain present without being overwhelmed. This clarity matters because confusion and delay are often more damaging than the initial event itself. When people know what to expect and what not to do, they are less likely to freeze or to act impulsively. They become steady anchors in a moment when the body is losing its internal balance. Preparedness also reframes responsibility. It does not place the burden of treatment on untrained individuals, but it honors the vital role of early response. The first minutes of a stroke are not about curing, but about preserving possibility. Protecting the airway, preventing falls, reducing stress, and noting the progression of symptoms all influence how much of the brain remains salvageable when medical treatment begins. These actions do not require advanced knowledge, only awareness and restraint. There is also a philosophical dimension to preparedness. It reflects an acceptance of human vulnerability without surrendering to helplessness. Aging, illness, and sudden events remind us that control is never absolute, yet response always matters. Preparedness sits in this middle space where humility and agency coexist. It teaches that care is not always loud or dramatic, but often quiet, attentive, and grounded. For many people, learning what to do before help arrives also reduces fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but knowledge introduces structure. When the mind knows the sequence of priorities, panic loosens its grip. Breathing slows, observation sharpens, and time is used more effectively. This internal regulation mirrors the external support being offered to the person experiencing the stroke, creating a shared field of calm that benefits both. Ultimately, preparedness is an act of compassion. It acknowledges that emergencies will occur, but insists that they do not have to unfold in chaos. It affirms that even in moments when medical expertise is not yet present, human presence still has value. By learning how to protect rather than interfere, how to observe rather than rush, and how to remain calm rather than succumb to fear, individuals become quiet partners to biology. In those first fragile minutes, this partnership can mean the difference between added harm and preserved potential, between confusion and clarity, between isolation and care.